obviously, all 6 of these gentlemen and their organizations have been very successful. They've grown, they've expanded, they've been able to raise capital, and we're just so thrilled that they're here in Chicago. My first question for 2 or 3 or 4 of you to answer is, what will it take to keep your organizations in Chicago? Because I think that's one thing that we're also interested in knowing, is that we know there's talent here. We know that innovation is resident within this great city of ours, but how do we make sure that people and companies like many in this room continue to stay here and thrive here? What will it take?
When I started Ovation, one of the big challenges I did have was it's not really a hub for biotech, pharma startups. Most companies go out to the West Coast or they go to the East Coast. And that's just typically been what's happened in the industry. I wanted to be in Chicago. My family's here. My wife wouldn't move. So really I was committed to being here. And I started it and was very fortunate, because what Chicago does have is tremendous infrastructure for my industry. It has great teaching institutions, research hospitals, has for the physicians, for the scientists. It has great pharma big companies, and all the great talent in these companies don't want to be in big companies always, and they're looking for the more entrepreneurial, innovative opportunities. So I was able to get the best of the best talent, and I was able to get support from the community, from the city, from the mayor's been great. And it really was a win for me to be in Chicago. When I sold the company, it was important to me, if me, the investors, everybody made a lot of money, and all the employees lost their job, that was not a win. So we were fortunate that several of the companies wanted the team that we had here in Chicago, wanted the platform, wanted the talent, and it was a big European pharma company. Part of the commitment was they were going to keep it here in Chicago. And they liked what we had here. They saw the opportunity to keep growing. As part of what I sold was that there's a lot of room to keep growing, and had hundreds and hundreds of employees. And that was it. When I started my new company, Paragon Pharmaceuticals, same thing. I saw the opportunity, it was truly unique, and I think Chicago has a real opportunity, and I talk about it all the time, to be a biotech, innovative pharma hub here in the Midwest. I mean, we have all the pieces, and it should be here. We need to capitalize on that.
Terrific. Thanks, Jeffrey. Somebody else? Andrew? John?
So this is actually an issue we're dealing with right now. The auction floor that I described for you earlier has progressed towards a traded exchange for intellectual property. And for reasons that aren't surprising, there is interest on the coast, both in New York for the exchange business, in the West Coast for the venture side of it. And there's tremendous interest internationally to create an IP-based marketplace, both in Europe and in Asia. And the attitude that we first encountered in Chicago from the financial community was more, build it and then we will buy it, as opposed to let's partner with you to build it. And we reached out to the governor and to the mayor, and I can tell you they've both been fantastic. The mayor literally, it was really Jack Lavin when he was the head of the DECO, and then Mayor Daley, and both of them picked up the phone and made calls to the financial service firms, to corporate organizations. And so we're going to see how that chapter unfolds, but everyone's doing everything they can to build the industry here, not just keep Ocean Tomo here.
That's great. Thanks. Andrew?
So we're at a point now, I love Chicago for the most part. I love having a company here, but about a month ago, we kind of made a decision that was long overdue, or came to the conclusion, and I hope you can tell me it's the wrong decision, but I don't think you'll be right, that we can't build the engineering organization that we need in Chicago. So we've acquired a couple companies we've acquired a company in the Valley. We've hired people in the Valley. There's good talent here, but it's just a shallow pool. And now with some of the things that we're dealing with scale, with just some of the technologies that we're getting into. It's stuff that there's maybe a handful of people, if even in Chicago, that have ever experienced it. And it makes sense. It's totally rational that it would be that way. The way that I think a great technology culture evolves is by having great companies that get big and then start to suck, and then everybody leaves and goes and starts their own companies, and it takes years, it takes generations for something like that to cultivate. So I'd love to, we'll still have engineers here, it'll be the best and brightest, but I think a lot of our hiring is going to end up being in the Valley, just because we've had trouble, and it's with us in particular, we can make awesome offers for people. We can give people as much money or more money as Google is offering them, or Facebook, or anyone else. We can give them really exciting engineering tasks to work on. We have a great culture. All those things are there. It's just the only time we've had luck getting people to move to Chicago, with one or two exceptions, is when like their wife wants to come home, or they have family back here and they want to raise kids, or something like that. So I think it's worth. Again, I love Chicago, but I think it's worth just being realistic about that.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know if I'd call this a disagreement, because I tend to agree on some of the development and engineering things, but I will say one thing we have found: our marketplace, selling to big organizations, we built our company not from the developers up, but frankly from sort of the business side down. And I will tell you what Chicago has been, just from the DNA standpoint, I would agree the pool isn't as deep, but 6 years ago, I started making some hires of folks who grew up in the area, went to school at Northwestern, USC, or U of I, and worked for companies on either coast, and grew up at the Siebels and the Oracles and doing some of the product management and things. You gotta look harder, but I think when you find people, which we've been blessed enough to do, the loyalty is there, the commitment is there, and I've never met anyone that grew up in this area that sort of has that type of background that's as passionate as some of the people we have. So I think it takes more time, and you gotta be patient. I would agree with you, but we're not going anywhere.
Well, I would say then that kind of speaks to, again, being in kind of the tech organization, is having, so we've got these great schools like U of I, CS department, and all that kind of stuff, and Northwestern and University of Chicago. Don't let them flee. I mean, let them be available, be aware of the opportunities that exist in Chicago. A lot of times it's not obvious. It's they look at it and they say, well, I guess I can do Accenture, or I can do big company or whatever, and not really realize that there is this entrepreneurial kind of dimension that a lot of times they're not aware of. So I think attracting and making these graduates aware that they don't have to flee to the West Coast is something that will help keep companies here and build companies here.
Terrific. Great. Well, I didn't know that question was going to be so provocative. Michael?
Yeah, I just want to comment. I want to compliment Andrew for his candor, because I think it's really important to be candid. And I think there are a lot of us in the room that want to change it and want to work with him and others to make it an even better and more vibrant environment. So I was really delighted to hear your candor.
Michael, thank you. And Michael, by the way, is the co-chair of the Mayor's Council for Technology Advisors, along with Hardy Bob.
The real co-chair.
Who's also here.